Hi, I'm Mike Bearden, and this is my video on SEED 583. 583 is basically about curriculum design and with, obviously, disabilities in mind. And before I even begin, let me tell you probably the number one takeaway for me from this course in my observations and my long-term sub-opportunities really was the realization of how much longer it takes to communicate material to the students with special needs. In other words, I sub quite a lot at junior high and senior high level, and actually every day. And whether it's short-term, one-day, long-term opportunities, the general ed course, whether it's inclusive or not, is quite different, obviously, than the pull-out situation with only special needs students. So, with all that said, when you take a long term, and I'll begin by sharing when I've had the long term opportunities, some of which also doubled up in my observations, I discovered that as I'm planning the material that wasn't really given to me, I created the material for that 5, 6, 8 weeks, then I had to realize that I could not cover the same amount as the general ed inclusive. Now I did learn that a little bit last year, but this year, because of the class's intent and purpose, I really dove into it and found out even more how to connect and communicate with students with learning disabilities. Now these disabilities were all over the charts, not just because of the students themselves and what their learning disability was, but also because of the age group. You see, I subbed a couple long terms for junior high. That 7th and 8th grade awesome individual that may or may not have hit that new development called adolescence yet. Yay! And then I've been able to contrast that with some of my other observations in the high school level. So I've learned a plethora over this last year, specifically this semester's focus. And not only in the curriculum development is it different, but it crossed over into collaboration. How did I work with the aides? How did I double up with the teachers? You know, at the secondary level, you usually teach 2 or 3 courses, you collaborate 2 or 3, and then you have 1 period off, which is kind of why I'm here. I'm dazzling them with my Espanol, actually my Spanglish today in a general ed course, but it does have 8 special needs students in the class. And this is my free period, so therefore the video. Really, if I want to reflect and talk about in the disability comparison and my reflective pedagogy, the opportunities in math and English, it was fantastic. I did learn the difference with individual coursework versus group coursework. You know, small groups, large group, you really need to identify those students who may not even really be interested. In fact, their only interest is to disrupt the class. And that probably presented its largest challenge for me. When I'm designing curriculum to present to the class as a whole, and then I want to use small groups as part of that effectiveness, very different in a pull-out setting, only students with special needs, and the inclusive GE environment. Wow, it's really becoming night and day to me as far as the awareness level, the participation level. There's the social interactions before and after class really start setting the mindset for these students. You know, whether they were hyper between class, and of course they were so busy with students, can I go to the restroom the first second they walk in? No, that's what the passing period's for. And not just transitions between classes, but also transitions between the curriculum that we're teaching, whether it be a transition from a small group activity, starting off with their agenda or a quick write into a group, maybe a PowerPoint where I present material. All sorts of transitions, and keying in on the students that, for whatever reason, and their unique learning disabilities, I really need to slow down sometimes. I need to key in on those students who visually and audibly might need it repeated 3 times. And that's also working with my aide. So if I have the opportunity, I will talk with my aide beforehand, let him or her know where we're headed. They'll give an outline of the material, and so that they can also double up with me on some of the specific students and some of their needs during the actual presentation of the classroom material. And I would say that that's probably one of my biggest challenges, is working with not just the GE student, but GE teacher, but also really that aide that's in the class in the pullout. That's huge. You have that opportunity. It was kind of interesting. I really didn't have a collaborative teacher with me. I was always the collaborative teacher. Anyways, that's another story. Adaptations, as I mentioned before, was to present the material visually via PowerPoints, usually, also on their handouts, and give them multiple opportunities to let me know what they learned. How do they communicate it? I allowed them to respond to questions on exams or quizzes, both written, verbal, and even through art. They can draw a picture of what it was. So I tried to connect on a couple different levels with the students. The EL student in particular, fantastic. I experienced both with Hispanics as well as Asians, and it was very interesting at both junior high and senior high level. Regardless of where they're at developmentally and whether they're just showing me attitude, the importance of bringing in and attempting miserably my short little spurts of speaking their language to them. I would learn several phrases and try to connect with them, and at least they felt that, okay, weird as this Mr. Beard might be, he's doing something. He's trying to communicate other than just yelling at me. That was very, very important in both the math and English reflective pedagogy, as well as I would say the GE coursework that I was able to sub with. It was just interesting to be able to present that different perspective. And lastly, when I did have the incredible opportunity to sub where the disability was deaf. There were a couple students in the English courses that I had subbed for the English pedagogy that was phenomenal. I got to work not only with the aide, because it was a pull-out class for special ed, but I also was able to work with the interpreter. And they had a couple different interpreters come in and out during that long-term sub opportunity, and it was phenomenal. I, again, would reach out and try to learn expressions for the students, and they had quite a fun at my own expense, and that's fine. But again, in developing and communicating the curriculum, it was really important that I repeat eye contact, hand motions, visuals, whatever it took to communicate the literature that we were going through at the time. So I really enjoyed that. Perhaps my biggest challenge was to keep what I call my head on a swivel. These were mild to moderate students, but in the moderate, they could have gone moderate severe at times. In fact, in one of the courses, we had a student, teacher's aide, if you will, was helping, but he was mod severe / more in the moderate range. And I had to make sure that he wasn't being inappropriate with the other students or causing emotional turmoil. It was extremely beneficial to witness that and work with that as well. That was just another opportunity for my head to constantly be looking left and right, which that in and of itself created that emotional exhaustion, not just be able to deliver the material and the curriculum, but to do so that I was completely aware of the classroom environment and the dynamics that was going on. It was phenomenal overall this entire semester. I really did enjoy it, had a great time. I was kind of limited in the availability of monitoring and gathering of data, but whenever I could, I would do so. Even though I wasn't, believe it or not, privy to the IEPs, even in the long terms as a sub, which was a little discouraging, I was able to pick up pretty quick what some of the issues were, and people were available when I would ask them questions. But gathering that data and present it back to the powers to be, mostly administration and or heads of the department, and then sometimes I had a chance to connect with parents, but not too often, which is fine. But It was an incredible opportunity this semester. Developing curriculum and making those adaptations relative, important, and developing that exciting learning environment was a challenge. But that's really what it's about. If the kids don't want to be here, they're not going to want to learn. It's really, again, about that behavior management, connecting with them, learning how to communicate, and then education. And if I try to put education ahead of the other two, it's mostly ineffective. So, again, great opportunity. I look forward to whatever lies ahead.